Hello, I am Jessie and I knit, sew, crochet, spin, write, live in Atlanta, Georgia, and I'm gonna share today a few things that I've been working on because I like watching when other people do that on YouTube, and I figure it's great if I can share the love and maybe you can find something inspiring from what I do. So today I will take you through a couple of things I've been working on, a couple of things I want to maybe start working on, and some things I've been enjoying. So let's get started. So one of the things I've been working on, actually you can see right behind me, which are some quilt squares for the Granny Patch quilt from Lo and Behold Stitchery, which is a pattern that I have loved since it first came out, and I've been working on some blocks kind of here and there as I've found the time and found the energy to quilt. I used to quilt a lot and then really got into knitting and garment sewing, and so I haven't done as much of that lately. Also, feedback from my family is that we have enough quilts, so I try to be a little bit more slow and really mindful with my quilting nowadays. But you can, I think, see I have some of the pieces for the quilt squares that I haven't yet assembled. The quilt I'm making is going to be 12 squares in total, and so the first one I ever made, which I think is actually my favorite so far, is this one. So she has a really cool method that you use to strip piece these, so that essentially you're forming a quadrant. Oh gosh, you're forming like a quadrant by strip piecing, and then you put it all together and it makes this amazing sort of granny square-esque quilt, with using the navy being the negative space of a proper granny square, where you would like do the first round, second round, third round, and it has a really incredible effect. I love practically every finished version I've seen of this, and so I'm excited to make my own using some fabric that I got last Christmas. This is a wovens bundle from Ruby Star Society that I got from my mother-in-law for Christmas from Stash Fabrics, which is my favorite local to me online yarn shop, online fabric shop. They don't have a storefront, but you can shop from Stash Fabrics, and they're my favorite women-owned Atlanta-based fabric store. So she got me this kit last year, and I decided of the full kit, I really loved the navy as my main fabric, and so the navy is the only fabric that I bought a few more yards of, so I had enough to make all of these hundreds of strips that go with all the colors from the woven bundle. So I really love it. So you can see two of them behind me. That one I just shared, and then here's one more. And all of these are gonna have different variations of like where the colors arrive in the block. So they're all a little bit different, but they're really cohesive. So love that. All right, sorry about that. If you heard my cat, she needed me, so I took a small cat break. The second thing I've been working on, wow, this is in no particular order, is some hand spinning, and I have been using some fiber that gets sent to me in like a little mystery club that I joined by Kira Wiggins, and so I get a little 50-gram bat every month that she does up, and this color is called Tricks Are for Kids. So I really love it's like mostly this kind of neutrally but still bright and exciting purple, like blue purple, and then there's little hints of like green and pink in there, and so I just spun this up this week, and I really loved it. I really love it, and I think I'll make it into like a chain ply so 3-ply, using my e-spinner. I think I'll include a little bit of footage in this video of me spinning this. I also have been working on one other spinning project, which is actually featured in a project that I'll show you. But I got this big ball of wool. It used to be a lot bigger, in Asheville, North Carolina, when we were there earlier this year in the spring of 2025. And this was really my first project that I worked on my electric spinning wheel. And so you can see this is just a little bit of this as a single ply, and then I spun it together, applied it together as a 2-ply. So I'll include some details about both of these kinds of wool if you're curious about that in the description. But essentially, yeah, it's just been really fun. This was from like a North Carolina sheep farm. And so the shop there had a lot of really good local fiber to spin. And so I picked an undyed one. They had a lot of undyed stuff. And I'm using this already spun in a 2-ply in a project that I will show you in a few minutes. So that has also been really fun. I'm a pretty new spinner, and I previously had spun on a nano from electric eel wheel, and that was basically just to practice it. And I decided that I really liked it, and so I bought my big electric eel wheel spinner this summer. And I grabbed a Modelo with some lime. So back. So the next thing I want to share with you is, I realized to tell you what I'm wearing. I'm wearing a Zadie jumpsuit that I made into shorts. So if you can see the shorts, I really like Zadie. It's actually a very easy, I think, beginner-friendly pattern. The way that you combine the front pieces, the back pieces, and the bottoms, it's actually quite simple. It's just like a little drop sleeve, so there's no sleeve attachment. And the way that she has you attach the cords is quite simple. So this is a fun pattern. I do enjoy it. It's not maybe the best for like shape wise, but that actually makes it really easy because you don't really have to fiddle with darts or anything like that. And I made a fancy version with velvet a few years ago to wear to a wedding. It has sleeves. And I've also made a version like this back in 2020, actually, my first ever Zadie, and it was really fun. So I made this one last summer. It's really hot here in Georgia, and so it's been a really fun, made in linen, probably from Blackbird Fabrics. So yeah, that's what I'm wearing. So, all right, a couple of works in progress that I want to share with you. First is my Flores sweater. So this is a cute little soda pop project bag from Republica Unicornia that I love, and she's also local to Atlanta. This sweater has been on my favorites, my queue for years, and it honestly just, usually my litmus test is if I look at enough project pages and it looks really good and fun on everyone, and actually turned out like the pattern maybe looks like, and looks shape, kind of isn't like too super malformed or misshapen, and the yoke looks really good and the stitch pattern seems fun, then I'll make it. So this is Flores. So the stitch pattern is actually a really, really easy, very memorizable, but very engaging stitch pattern. It's a fingering weight sweater, and I'm specifically using almost practically a lace weight. I think this is the Manas del Uruguay Fino, which actually has a little bit of silk in it, and the silk is really, really beautiful. It's like super, super drapey. I've used it once before in a sweater held with mohair, and I really liked it. So this is just the Fino on its own. If you can see the stitch pattern, it kind of has like a broken rib. So one row, every other row is just knitting, and then the stitch pattern comes with a combination of knits and purls. So it's actually like pretty intuitive, a lovely raglan there. The sweater itself is designed to have a pretty deep raglan yoke, and then it can be either short sleeve or quarter sleeve. I decided to make my yoke a little less dramatic because I really liked the fit, but I didn't necessarily want like the swan show effect. And so the raglan shaping was really fun. I love a top-down raglan. It's honestly just joyful knitting. You can see I've split for the sleeves, and thus where the dramatic part of this sweater comes into place, you can see a pretty extreme, almost dip-dyed dye lot change. So classic Jessie, I cast this on with literally just one ball of yarn, figured I could pick some more up at my local yarn shop, and then they were sold out. And so I ordered it from the internet, no big deal. And the difference in skein is like quite possibly the most dramatic I've maybe ever experienced. I even did a little bit of like fading. So I was just working like 1 to 2 rows in each color and then switching. And I even tried a little bit of helical knitting. The way that this pattern, stitch pattern is though, the helical was leaving a little bit of a gap, a little bit of holes in where you would purl. And so I didn't really like that. So I just switched back to some basic striping essentially, and pretty much tried to do what I could to fade it. I'm still not in love with it, though my good friend Gabby, who runs a yarn store in North Georgia, north of the city, she assured me that it almost has so much of like a dip dye effect that it's actually going to turn out okay. But yeah, that's kind of why I've stalled on this project, because I was feeling so dismayed by the huge amount of discrepancy in the dye lot that I wasn't sure if I would love it when I got done. And to make matters worse, I do actually have a second skein of this yarn, but it's knit up into a shawl that already exists. And so if I wanted to have the exact same dye lot, I could technically frog that shawl. I don't wear it that much. But Gabby has assured me that it would be okay if I continue. So I don't know. So here I am. So I've been working on this project. I started it in February. It was travel knitting for a while. It's been a super great travel project, but it has stalled. I do really want to finish it though, so I need to decide if I'm okay with this. Maybe seeing it on camera here will help me make that decision. So that is one project. The second project that I've been working on, I started a few months ago when I couldn't really think of what I felt like working on. I have a lot of sweaters and we live in a hot climate, so I don't really need to produce a ton of sweaters very quickly. And so I've kind of forced myself to maybe pick up more of a modular or slow project. So usually that's something with like cables or lace or color work that makes me go a little bit slower. And so I picked up the Heirloom Quilt cardigan, which is a decently popular pattern that I've seen some people make, and I really love everyone's versions. And so I started making some blocks, once again with literally one skein of yarn as my background color and one skein of dyed in the wool as my colorwork color, which I tend to do. And then so I figured, okay, if I'm going to continue this, I like doing this, how should I continue? I need to actually buy enough yarn for the project. So I went to my friend Gabby's yarn shop, One More Row in Woodstock, and sourced the dyed in the wool and this amble. This is Fiber Company amble, which is a yarn I've used once before in a cardigan that I really loved, and so I wanted to use it again and started making squares. Now the one thing she did also tell me, I think I still have a little sample in here. Yeah, this is one of my first ones. So this is a different background color, background yarn too. I was just making them like this, which is how the pattern has you do. You just make a bunch of squares like this. And Gabby pretty quickly said, Jessie, having made one of these, my number one suggestion is go ahead and make them in strips. So go ahead and make 3 or 4 or 5, however many you want to in a row, so that you don't have to do any horizontal seaming later. And I think that was a great tip. So whenever I finish the last row of the colorwork star, the quilt star, I just do the next row starting with the new yarn, so there's no like selvage stitches in between. And that is hopefully going to give me essentially less work later when I have to put these all together to make the cardigan itself. And I'll probably do similar to what my friend Gabby did, which is add maybe a little bit of a garter panel in between for the, so if there's like quilts here, quilt stars here, quilt stars on the back, I'll put them together with like a 3 needle bind off and some ribbing at the top, and then I'll do like a garter stitch on the sides, and then add a hem and a button band and some sleeves. So I don't really love to wear my cardigans closed, so I probably won't even put buttonholes in the button band, but I'll still make like a placket essentially. And I'm using just different colors of dyed in the wool that I got from Gabby's shop. So you can kind of see, I'm doing a combination of like pulling from the outside or pulling from the inside if I like the colors that are coming next. So I can't remember all of the different colors that I picked, but I'll put them in the description. So there's a lot of really good kind of combinations happening here that I like. And I'm also using, I think the pattern calls for like worsted weight yarn and then size 6 or 7 needles. I live in Georgia, so I'm using sport weight yarn. Amble is considered a fingering weight. Dyed in the wool is a sport weight, and I'm using, I think, size 3 needles, pretty small. So my squares, I think, are going to be a lot smaller than, yeah, size 3. That is a 3.25 millimeter. So my squares are quite a bit smaller, but I think it's actually going to be really pleasurable to me, and knitting the pattern is still very enjoyable. Let me show you the ones I have already finished and blocked. So it was pretty important to me to block some of these first and figure out, did I like this? Did I like my tension? This has been a really interesting project for practicing my own tension, knitting colorwork flat, and with like these kind of extreme, basically how to like catch my yarn in the back has been also, how to catch and carry my yarn in the back has been a really big experiment. So this is one of the strips that I've already completed and blocked, and I do like the way it's turning out. This is another one that I have completed and blocked, and I think they're really pretty, and I need to do a better job of kind of paying attention to what I've already composed here, because I don't have the liberty of changing them later. When, if you did these block by block, you would. So these are the 3 that I've already finished. So I'm thinking that I'll probably be able to do maybe like 5 or 6 of these on the back to create like a panel for the back, and then probably 2 panels for the front. So if you imagine a side panel here, some ribbing up here, and then a hem and a placket, and then so 2 more on here, and then I think maybe 5 or 6 in the back if I decide that I want a little bit more width in the back, and then I'll just attach for sleeves and add sleeves out there. So I'm really pleased with these so far. I think at first when I saw this as a quilter, my first thought is I can literally, I mean, knitting takes so long and the gauge is so hard to predict. Like you can literally just quilt this faster than you could knit it. But I finally came around when I sort of thought about like the meditative process of this stitch pattern. And it, you know, it took me doing about 9 of these before I had the chart pretty much memorized, and especially like which rows I was going to know. I knew I was going to be working front versus back, so on the purl side, and learning just how to manage my yarn, how to carry my yarn, how to manage the tension, and how to actually get comfortable with like color work on the purl side. Once I had all that down, I actually felt like it kind of unlocked some new skills as a knitter, And so I'm trying to see this as like more of a merging of my interests than something that I could just do a lot faster if I were to quilt it, honestly. So that is the Heirloom quilt cardigan, and I do really like it. And it's pretty fun. Don't be intimidated if you pick it up and you're like, oh gosh, this first one took me forever. I'm not gonna enjoy this. Look, it's like so curly. You saw on my needles, like when you're doing it, they're super, super curly and a little bit upsetting. But push past that, and you will get better at your color work and your tension, which is very exciting. I think especially flat color work is something that feels kind of like a knitter's Everest. So I'm enjoying that project so far. The next thing I have for you is super silly. It's the beginnings of a cake. So I've been a member of Creative Bug for a really long time, and I really love Creative Bug because I've learned how to crochet, I've learned how to sew a bathing suit, I've learned how to do watercolor quilting, I've learned how to do tapestries. Like there are really, really cool, there's so much you can learn on Creative Bug. And so I've been a member for like literally 12 years now, I think. And Twinkie Chan is one of my favorite designers on there, and she is the one who taught me how to crochet. She has a really wonderful like kind of cadence and pace, and her directions really make sense, and she's always making really cute, adorable things. So I actually bought literally, she did a Creative Bug, her July course was like 30 days, or they do like 31 days, like a daily practice of something. So it could be, watercolor, it could be paper mache, or it could be crochet. And this is one of Twinkie Chan's a whole month. She did a bunch of different techniques and tips and patterns for making crocheted cakes. I have Twinkie's book, and she has a pattern in there for making a tissue paper cover that looks like a cake. And of course I think it's really cute, but I had never really made it. I prefer crocheting with a video if I can, because I just think I like the visuals of understanding crochet patterns. And so I learned how to make the shape for the bottom, sides, and top of the cake, and then these little like puffs for the icing. And then she has a lot of other instructions, I just haven't added them yet, for adding some drips and like what do I want to say, little crescents, bows, strawberries, whipped cream, candles. So I'm going to be adding a lot more to this, but this was really just my experiment. And I did actually order this cake form on the internet. Turns out there's a whole subworld of fake cake shapes you can just buy. They're already in cake form, but I was so zealous when I bought this that I accidentally bought a 6x4 instead of a 4x6, and so the cake came like the correct height, but it was really, really wide. And so I was gonna have to like restart the whole thing and make like a short wide cake, and I didn't really want to make that. I wanted to make this cute little one, and so I actually took it out to the garage and like spent a long time cutting this down to 4 inches from 6 inches. And so it actually is a little bit wonky. It's imperfect, and I love it. So yeah, this will eventually be a fully decorated cake, but it is currently an in process cake. Thanks Twinkie Chan for that pattern. And the next thing I have in here, these are some projects that I've really been excited to do. So we went on vacation last month. We went to visit some national parks, and we visited Las Vegas. And I'd never been to any of those places, and so I only brought my Heirloom quilt cardigan. And so by the time I got home, I was really like excited for something different to work on. And so I cast on 2 little shawls, and I'm not normally a shawl person, but one of these projects is going to be a knit along with my sisters-in-law actually. Two of them are kind of beginner, advanced beginner knitters, and like one of them knits a lot of socks, and the third one is actually this will be her first knit project ever. So we're doing the Sophie shawl, which is the big sister of the Sophie scarf. And this is literally just the start of my project. So I'm not very far, but I was inspired by my sister-in-law who is just learning to knit. We took her to the yarn shop and she picked out some yarn that was based on a shop sample actually, that had a little bit of silk in it. I think it was maybe, I'm gonna forget the brand, but it had a little bit of silk in it. And so I happen to have these two skeins of Snug and Spun yarn that my friend, who is a designer, actually designed her logo. And so she had ordered some of this for me because she likes to, she's actually done a couple of different dyers logos. Just happens to be a cool intersection of her profession and my hobby. And so she'll be like really nice and say, Jessie, do you want a skein or two? And so actually she bought me 4 skeins. This is just one skein split up. She bought me another one that goes with this. That's just this like really excellent, lovely, very silky, very drapey wool and silk yarn. It's fingering weight. I'm holding it double here to achieve the gauge of the Sophie shawl. And so, the yarn shop, my sister-in-law, this version, the shop sample that had this silk in it was like the most dreamy Sophie shawl. And so she picked that, and I said, I think I want to do that too, because I want a really drapey, very neutral shawl, like a shawl that I know I'll actually wear with stuff and will go with everything. And so this might seem like a somewhat boring knit, but I'm actually really enjoying it because the texture is so good. And of course the Sophie shawl is like, any of the Sophie patterns are like peak television knitting. So extremely easy. I'm not very far, as you can see, but I think it will be a really enjoyable project. And all 4 of us are knitting a Sophie shawl this fall as a knit along. So that I think will be very fun. The final thing I have in here is a conglomeration of my hand spun compiled with 1 skein of Spin Cycle Dream State. The colorway is Big Sky. I went to DC last month for a work conference, and I went to their local yarn shop, Loop Yarns, I think, and actually went with a couple of my colleagues in my profession. We were all there for a national conference, and so we went there, and I did pick up a skein of Dream State. I'm typically kind of I rarely work with Spin Cycle, so it's actually very weird that I have 2 projects that have Spin Cycle right now. But I happened to be there, and I really loved this skein, and I kept like putting it down and then going back to it and putting it down and going back to it. And so to me, it was a, just go ahead and get it. You're on vacation. It's like, it's travel money, whatever. So I bought a skein of Big Sky, and I really like the colors. I'm really excited. I purposely started with the outside, which was like greens and blues, so that I could end with these like pinks and oranges. And I'm hoping when this skein runs out, it will bleed right into some of my hand spun. So essentially what I have here is these are my hand spun. They're like a really light kind of pink with some blues and greens. So eventually I will start working. When this runs out, I'll add in these as like the second half of the shawl. And then this is also hand spun that I did. I showed you earlier the wool that I had picked up in Asheville. And so this is a 2-ply that I worked up in undyed. It's an undyed yarn. And this is my main color for this shawl. And the shawl itself is in fact what is the name of the shawl? The Bright Lights Cowl? The Night Lights Cowl. So So this is the Night Lights cowl by Andrea Mowry, and the stitch pattern is really fun. I really love her shift stitch pattern. I made a shift and a night shift shawl and a shifty cowl and a night shift shawl, and I really loved the stitch pattern, but I don't wear my night shift. The cowl I wear quite a lot. I've actually made 2 of them. They're very, very wearable. I don't find the shawl very wearable. It was fun to knit, but it's not really very wearable. But I think the shape of Night Lights is really wearable. It's the kind of thing that's like small and narrow and long, and you can like wrap it around a bunch of times. And so this is so far what it looks like with the spin cycle. So it's a little bit like the Sophie shawl or scarf in that when you get to the halfway point, then you start decreasing. And so you can kind of do like, my goal is if basically I get to the halfway point with this skein, then I know I can start decreasing and add in these skeins to be my 50 grams. It'll sort of take me all the way to the end. If for some reason I get to the end of this and I don't feel like the shawl is like long enough to be 50% of what I want it to be, then it's like a very adaptable pattern. So then I think I'll just keep going or make it a little bit bigger. But I kind of love a long sort of narrow cowl or shawl. I find it to be more wearable than like the big like crescent or triangle shaped ones. And so I'm really pleased. I actually think it looks really cool on the back too. Just the way that the colors kind of gradiate, and this like very limey green at the start, and the stitch pattern is super memorizable. That was something I was really worried about because I bought her other pattern that she came out with earlier this year, the Through Lines shawl. And man, I started that and I had to frog it. I didn't love the way that my colors were shaping up. I didn't find the stitch pattern to be intuitive at all. I basically had to look, it was like a 14 or 18 row repeat, and I would have to look at the pattern for every single row to know what to do, and it just never felt like it clicked in my brain. This one, on the other hand, it is an 8 row repeat, and well, it might even be a 16 row because you do, basically the main difference is in how you increase every time. It's a little bit different, and so it's just basically remembering the same thing, except the first row when you're doing the color change has like a difference, and so once you get down which difference goes with which row, it's actually quite simple. And so this has been very, very enjoyable. I love any kind of like mosaic knitting that involves like slip stitches to achieve the color. I really like. So this has been very, very fun. I cast this on like 6 days ago. So this is what I've been doing just in the evenings if I like want to watch TV or something. And it's been very enjoyable. So speaking of TV, I always appreciate when people come in to end their podcasts with some recommendations or things they've been enjoying. I really like scary movies, so just this week I watched Bring Her Back, which had a lot of people had scared me about. I was really like expecting it to be truly disturbing, and while it was disturbing, it wasn't any more disturbing than like a lot of horror movies, and so actually thought it was even a little bit more hopeful at the end than the other movie by that director, which is called Talk to Me. It's an Australian director, so Bring Her Back was really great. I kind of watched it in like a little bit of a late night fever dream. I was just like really in a good headspace and put it on and found it to be engaging. Obviously trigger warnings for all sorts of things involving horror, so if you don't like horror, then definitely avoid this one. And if you do like horror, maybe just check out what it's about first so that you don't end up watching something that you would be uncomfortable by. I also just finished a book that is a Pulitzer Prize winning book called The Emperor of All Maladies, which is a biography of cancer. It's by Siddhartha Mukherjee, and he is a Rhodes Scholar and obviously an excellent writer. He won the Pulitzer. He's a physician and a cancer oncology researcher, and he wrote an incredible book that was really, really gripping, very readable. I did the audiobook. I love doing an audiobook. Obviously, lets me work on my projects while I learn something new. And this book had been on my TBR for honestly, like, since it came out. There was a long time where it wasn't available as an audiobook, and so I was a little intimidated by the length of it. I think it's over 500 pages, and so I was a little intimidated about reading a book on cancer that was that long. It might be technically difficult, but actually found that, especially as an audiobook, some of the technical details kind of got, you can cut, like, someone who knows how to pronounce them is going to pronounce them for you, and you can sort of move past it. And so that, to me, especially with a nonfiction, is a little bit easier. It's okay if I don't retain every single term that he's introducing, as long as I'm understanding the general principle, the general idea of the book. And I learned so much about, like, how much we've come to understand about cancer in the last, like, 150 years, and also how much we still don't know. So it was really, really gripping. He did a nice job including some stories of his own patients and stories of essentially the many cancer researchers who've come before him and how they've made the breakthroughs that they've made. So it was really, really good. I recommend that as well. A third thing that I've been enjoying that's been kind of entertainment and a lot lighter than either of those two things is Amy Poehler's podcast, which is available on YouTube. For some reason, I was having like a mental break with this podcast because I kept seeing clips of it on social media and it looked really fun and really funny. I think she's like perfect to do a podcast and interview people who are celebrities. But I, for some reason, thought it was like only on Spotify, and I don't listen to podcasts on Spotify. And then there was like a video component, and I felt stressed out about having to watch a video on Spotify. Spotify is for music, in my opinion. I use a different app for audiobooks. I use a different app for podcasts. So once I found it was on YouTube, I was like, oh duh, I can just do that. And so I've really been enjoying the Adam Scott, her interviewing Adam Scott just came out. I went back and listened to her interviewing Dakota Johnson, and it was awesome. Loved her. And so that has been a really enjoyable podcast for me to enjoy while I'm knitting or sewing, or honestly just being calm. She's really fun and really funny. So I think she asks great questions. One last thing I'll share. Well, I do actually have one more work in progress. I realized that I pulled off of the couch actually when I was coming to record, which is a quilt, an Omega quilt. I think the pattern designer is Miss Makes. I will double check that if I'm wrong. I'll correct myself below. But essentially this pattern, this quilt is like 99% done. The only reason it's not done is because I was insistent that I quilt some of it by hand. And so you can see I've already finished a lot of the quilting. I like to do like a diagonal, like a hatch. So I had already been doing all of the lines in this direction by machine, and then I started doing some of them by machine this way, but I decided I wanted to do some of them by hand. And so I have moved this project to the couch, which means that then if I'm knitting on the couch, I'm not quilting on the couch. And so it has become dormant for a long time. And so all that I need to do is finish quilting it and then bind it. Obviously, it still has its bits hanging out. But it's also become just one of my favorite quilts to lander, even while it's unfinished. And so that's also a dangerous place for it to be, because it means that I'll just keep using it in its unfinished form. So use your quilts. This is the Omega quilt. You can see some of my hand quilting that I have finished right here. So yeah, I guess I was doing like every other row in hand quilting, and you can see, apologies for the cat hair, you can see that I haven't gone very far. So the Omega quilt is a lightly curved quilt pattern. So it's sort of like a riff on a 9-patch, but it's curvy. And you're probably not even gonna be able to see the whole thing in this frame, but hopefully it is showing enough of it for you to see. And I just did a little bit of patchwork on the back. I love a 9-patch, so I just did a little scrappy back. And this is some Essex yarn dyed linen, which is my favorite thing to put on the backs of quilts because it gets so soft and so lovely over time. And so that is my unfinished quilt that's sort of already in our quilt rotation on the couch. So the Omega quilt is super, super fun. I like sewing with curves even more than, definitely more than sewing triangles. I made a triangle quilt a couple of years ago that nearly killed me, and so I've sort of decided that squares and curves are where it's at for me, especially since I don't really need to create a lot of quilts, so I just try to stick with, I really love a 9 patch anyway, so this was very much an homage, and this fabric is actually, I think, a combination of a bunch of different Ruby Star fabrics. I have a good friend who actually works for Ruby Star, and she gave me some that was like multiple old collections, and she just had so much of it, and she said, do you want to use this? And so it's definitely more pattern and print than I normally use, and so I took the opportunity to make something that was really fun and joyful, and of course kept my neutral pretty neutral. So I used a bunch of just creams and beiges that I already had in my collection to make the secondary color. And I do love very much the 2-color versions of this quilt, and so I think if I were ever going to do it again, I would do a full just like tone on tone version of this quilt, but I don't need more quilts, so yeah, but I do have love for all of those. And one more note, because I'm, you know, a little bit of a bougie lady, I love a wool batting. I think it makes the quilts feel like clouds. They're warm, but they feel weightless. I used cotton batting for years, and I am a full convert to wool batting. So if you're wondering, that's what this is. And if you have never had the joy or pleasure of squishing a wool batting quilt, then you need to fix that right away. So come over to my house or find yourself some wool batting from the internet or your local quilt store and quilt yourself a delightful cloud fluff. Okay, one more thing I promised. One other thing I've been enjoying that has nothing to do with anything I've talked about is some mushroom tea, and not the mushroom teas that you get Instagram ads for, but a proper mushroom tea from a local mushroom farmer in or around Phoenix, Arizona. I was just in northern Arizona and went to a farmer's market in Flagstaff and had a wonderful time and got lots of cute stuff from local people, including some chai and some proper mushroom coffee. And I have been wanting to try it because I don't always love the way that coffee handles in my digestive system. And so I love the ritual of a morning cup, but I don't always love the flavor and or the way that it treats my body. So I have been looking for ways to have like other alternatives that were enjoyable and delicious that aren't coffee. And so mushroom tea or mushroom coffee alternative and chai have been really great ways to do that. And so I picked up some of both of those when I was in Flagstaff, and this company is called Muddy Waters with a Z. And you can actually get a subscription to their mushroom coffee, which I might actually do because it's genuinely so easy. And you just pop it in hot or cold water and add a little honey or maple syrup or simple syrup and some milk, and it's so good. So if you are getting those interesting ads and you're like, what is this? Is this for real? I don't know. I'm not doing it for any of the health benefits. I'm simply doing it to find a coffee alternative. And I got to try some at the booth at the farmer's market, and it was really good, and it made me decide that it might be worth getting, but I definitely didn't want to get it from like a big conglomerate where it would maybe taste like cardboard. I don't know. Maybe they taste great, but haven't tried them. But this company was great. It's literally just run by a couple of folks that have a farm, and they make mushroom coffee alternative. So Muddy Waters, yeah, I've been enjoying that. You can order their stuff online. Like I said, you can get a subscription, or if you happen to be in the northern Arizona area, pick some up at a farmer's market. Okay, I think that's all I have for you. Hopefully this isn't totally chaotic. Like I said, I really enjoy watching other people's makes on the internet, and so that's why I'm here sharing with you. And if you enjoyed, then hopefully I'll record again and you can follow along with me. So if you liked this video, I guess give it a like. I don't really know what that will do since I don't know how things work on YouTube, but it seems like that's what the cool kids do. So I hope you have a great week of making. I hope you got to work on something cozy and fun while you watch this, and maybe I'll see you again soon. Bye.